For almost 3 decades, the world carried a mystery that no one could solve. 5 young women vanished on a stormy night in September 1979, leaving behind whispers, rumors, and unanswered questions. Some believed they were dead. Others thought they had run away. But the truth was far more disturbing than anyone dared to imagine. My name is Grace. I'm 70 years old now, and today I will finally break the silence. This is not a tale of lost belief, but of darkness hidden behind holy walls, of power misused under the mask of faith, and of women who risked everything to escape a nightmare. What I'm about to share will change the way you see trust, religion, and the price of truth. Prepare yourself, because once you hear this story, you will never look at faith the same way again. I was 16 years old when I entered the convent, full of devotion and eager to dedicate my life to service. At first, everything seemed perfect. The daily routine gave me peace, the sisters became my family, and our prayers filled each day with meaning. Mother Agnes, our leader, was strict but fair, guiding us with discipline and kindness. Havenwood was a small town, and the convent stood proudly on a hill, respected by everyone. For years our lives were simple and joyful until the arrival of Father Michael. He was tall, commanding, and admired by many, but I soon noticed unsettling details: his lingering touches, his invasive questions during confession, his gaze that seemed to strip away dignity. Sister Sarah, only 19, also began to avoid him, and slowly the convent's joy turned into silence. When Mother Agnes fell gravely ill, the convent lost its shield, and Father Michael grew bolder. I remember the first time I saw him corner Sister Sarah in the library, gripping her wrist while her face showed fear. That night I could not sleep, knowing something terrible was unfolding. I tried to confide in Sister Eleanor, who at first was frozen by fear, but later whispered the word that would change everything: proof. From then on, I began to observe carefully, recording details, times, and words, realizing that what was happening was not isolated, but systematic. Father Michael used his authority to intimidate and manipulate, and the suffering of my sisters grew heavier each day. I knew we had to act, but I did not yet realize that this decision would force us to abandon our lives and vanish for decades. The convent, once a place of peace, had become a prison, and the man who claimed to guide us spiritually revealed himself as a predator cloaked in holiness. That was the beginning of our descent into shadows, and the first step toward the night when we would climb the walls and disappear. What happened next inside those convent walls would push us beyond fear and force us to plan the unthinkable, an escape that would change our lives forever. Life inside the convent began to change in ways that none of us could ignore. Father Michael's visits became more frequent, and each time he arrived, the air seemed heavier, as though his presence carried a shadow that spread across the walls. He often found excuses to isolate one of us, asking Sister Sarah to meet him in the sacristy or calling me to the library after prayers. His questions during confession grew more invasive, pressing into personal matters that had nothing to do with faith. Sister Sarah trembled whenever his name was mentioned, and I once found her in the pantry, adjusting her habit with shaking hands, whispering that he told her she must obey him or risk eternal punishment. My anger grew, but I knew that words alone would not protect us. I tried to speak with Mother Agnes, but she was ill and dismissed my concerns, insisting that I pray for forgiveness for doubting a priest. The silence among us became unbearable, and even Sister Joy, once full of laughter, began to lose her spirit. She confessed to me that Father Michael had interrogated her about her purity and grabbed her arm so tightly that it left a bruise. Seeing her broken was the moment I realized that he was destroying us one by one. I began to invent tasks that required us to work together, hoping to prevent anyone from being left alone with him. But he noticed my efforts and spread rumors that I was rebellious. Sister Martha, the eldest, began to watch me with suspicion, and Father Michael confronted me directly, asking if I was disobedient. I wanted to scream the truth, but I knew no one would believe me over him. That was when I understood that proof was our only weapon. I started recording every detail, every word, every time he touched or threatened one of us. One night, Sarah came to me with marks on her face and her habit torn, whispering that he demanded she give herself to him as penance. My fury was unlike anything I had ever felt, and I decided that the next day I would act. I went into town under the pretense of buying supplies and waited hours to see the bishop. When I finally spoke, I presented my notes and explained everything. He listened quietly, then sighed and asked if I was certain, reminding me that Father Michael was considered exemplary. I answered firmly that I was sure, but his response was cautious, warning me to remain discreet to avoid scandal. I left with hope that justice might come, but within days Father Michael returned, furious, and whispered that God punishes those who lie about his servants. The bishop had betrayed my trust, revealing my complaint to him. Sister Eleanor confronted me, saying I had gone behind their backs, and Father Michael claimed I was unstable. Soon, the bishop ordered my transfer to a remote convent in Montana for defamation. In that moment, I realized justice would never come from within the system. If I obeyed, I would be exiled and silenced, and my sisters would remain trapped. That was when the thought of escape first took root. Faced with betrayal from the very institution we trusted, we began to whisper the unthinkable, plans of escape that would demand courage greater than any vow we had ever taken. The idea of escape was terrifying, yet it became the only path left to us. I gathered the sisters in the cellar, surrounded by crates of food, and whispered the plan. At first, Eleanor hesitated, warning that if we ran, people would say we were guilty of something. Joy answered bitterly that we already carried shame and humiliation, abandoned by the very church we had trusted. Sarah sat quietly, hugging her knees, too broken to speak. Sister Martha, the eldest, finally spoke after a long silence, saying that she had served God for 60 years and thought she would die within those walls, but now she realized that sometimes sacrifice meant leaving everything behind. Her words gave us strength, and we agreed to flee together. The challenge was enormous. The convent wall was high, lined with shards of glass, and the gate was heavy and noisy. We had no money, no contacts, no clear destination. We prayed for guidance, and unexpectedly help came from Mr. Miller, the man who delivered vegetables to the convent. He was quiet, with calloused hands, but one day he looked at me and said I seemed troubled. At first I denied it, but he shared that his daughter had suffered in another convent, and by the time she spoke it was too late. His pain connected with ours, and I confessed that we needed help. From then on, he became our ally, slipping notes among the vegetables. He told us about a section of the rear wall where the stones were crumbling and a large oak tree grew close, its branches stretching over the top. He promised to leave a rope ladder hidden nearby. He also arranged for us to stay at his cousin's inn in North Carolina, using his savings to support us. We began to prepare in secret. Eleanor retrieved our documents, Joy gathered medicines, Sarah and I collected clothes, and Mr. Miller provided plain garments so we would not be recognized. Deciding what to leave behind was painful. My mother's rosary, Eleanor's prayer book, Joy's small statue, Martha's family album. We carried only what was necessary. As the day approached, fear grew stronger. One night, Sister Helen, who had always supported Father Michael, confronted us. We thought we were discovered, but instead she handed us her savings, admitting she had pretended to believe him out of fear. She said she was too old to start over but wanted us to have a chance. Her words revealed that we were not the only victims, and perhaps others had suffered before us. The night before the escape, I prayed deeply, asking if we were doing God's will. The next day, Mr. Miller left a note hidden in the lettuce. At midnight, during the rain, he would wait with his truck. That evening, we performed our duties as usual, hiding our nervousness. At midnight, the bell rang 12 times, echoing through the storm. We removed our habits, folded them carefully, and dressed in plain clothes. We were no longer nuns, but women fighting for freedom. We slipped out through the pantry, rain soaking us instantly. Joy threw the rope ladder over the wall, and one by one we climbed, Martha struggling but finally reaching the top with determination. Then we ran through the storm, 5 fugitives in the night, toward the waiting truck. What awaited us beyond that wall was not safety, but a new life of secrecy, false names, and endless fear, a journey that would test our strength more than the convent ever had. The storm carried us away from the convent, and Mr. Miller's truck became our lifeline. 3 of the sisters squeezed into the cab, while Joy and I hid under a tarp in the back, soaked and trembling. The road was muddy, the wheels sliding, and every bump felt like it might expose us. After what seemed endless, the truck stopped at an old barn on his brother-in-law's property, a place unused for years. Inside, the wooden walls smelled of hay, tools hung on nails, and sacks of feed were stacked in corners. It was simple but safe. Mr. Miller told us we could stay there for a few days until his cousin arrived to take us farther away. He left food, blankets, and promised to return. That night we gathered in a circle, holding hands, whispering prayers of gratitude for escaping. For the first time in years, we slept without fear of Father Michael's shadow. The next morning, Sister Martha brewed coffee on a small stove, smiling as she said she had slept peacefully. Her words reminded us that freedom, even in a barn, was sweeter than captivity in stone walls. Mr. Miller returned with more supplies and news. The convent was in chaos, Father Michael furious, claiming we had rebelled against faith. Police were searching highways and bus stations, but no one suspected we were hidden so close. He explained that his cousin Sam would arrive with a larger truck to take us to North Carolina, where we could stay at his inn. We needed new names and new stories. Eleanor began writing on paper, creating identities for us. I became Linda Peterson, a young teacher. Sarah became Emily, my sister. Eleanor and Joy became cousins, Catherine and Rose, and Martha became Aunt Millie, who had raised us after our parents' death. We practiced these names until they felt natural, repeating them like prayers. Wearing plain clothes instead of habits was strange. I looked at myself in a broken mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Joy said I looked younger, and I realized that outside the convent, the world judged differently. That night, anxiety returned. We were not only fugitives, but about to become new people. I woke before dawn, shaken by dreams of Father Michael finding us. Sitting outside, I watched the sky lighten, tears falling as I thought of vows broken and lives abandoned. Sarah joined me, admitting she was scared. I told her that God does not live only in convent walls or habits, but in the hearts of those who seek truth. Together, we found strength in that belief. The next step of our journey would demand even greater courage as we prepared to leave the barn, take on false identities, and begin a life of hiding that would last for decades. The barn became our temporary refuge, but we knew it was only a pause before the next stage of our journey. Mr. Miller explained that his cousin Sam would arrive soon with a larger truck to take us to North Carolina, where we could stay at his inn until we figured out how to build new lives. The thought of leaving the state gave us hope, but it also meant we had to prepare for complete transformation. We could no longer be nuns. We had to become ordinary women with ordinary stories. Eleanor, always thoughtful, insisted we create identities that would hold up under questions. She wrote down names and roles for each of us, weaving a story of cousins and sisters who had lost everything in a flood. I became Linda Peterson, a young teacher starting over. Sarah became Emily, my younger sister. Eleanor and Joy became cousins Catherine and Rose, and Martha became Aunt Millie, the elder who had raised us. We practiced these names until they felt natural, repeating them like prayers, knowing that forgetting even once could expose us. Mr. Miller brought civilian clothes, and wearing them was surreal. For years, the habit had been my identity, and now I looked into a cracked mirror and saw someone unfamiliar. Joy commented that I looked younger, and I realized that outside the convent, appearance mattered in ways I had never considered. The second night in the barn was restless. Anxiety about the future pressed on us, and I woke before dawn, shaken by dreams of Father Michael finding us. Sitting outside, I watched the horizon brighten, tears falling as I thought of vows broken and lives abandoned. Sarah joined me, admitting she was scared. I told her that God does not live only in convent walls or habits, but in the hearts of those who seek truth. That belief gave us strength. When Sam finally arrived, his truck was larger and sturdier, and he greeted us with kindness. We climbed in, carrying only the essentials, and began the long journey south. The roads stretched endlessly, and every passing car made us tense, fearing discovery. We spoke little, each lost in thought, rehearsing our new names silently. Hours later, we reached the inn, a modest place tucked in the mountains. Sam welcomed us inside, offering rooms and food. For the first time, we felt a fragile sense of safety, yet even there the weight of secrecy pressed on us. We knew the world believed we had vanished, and we could never reveal the truth. Our lives had become a delicate balance of survival and silence. Though the inn gave us shelter, it was only the beginning of a long exile, a hidden existence where every day demanded caution and every moment carried the risk of exposure. At the inn in North Carolina, we began the difficult process of living under new identities. Sam welcomed us warmly, giving us rooms and meals, but reminded us that secrecy was essential. We practiced our names daily, repeating them until they felt natural, and rehearsed the story of being cousins and sisters who had lost everything in a flood. Every detail mattered because one slip could expose us. The inn was modest, surrounded by mountains, and though it offered safety, the fear of discovery never left us. We avoided drawing attention, speaking little to strangers, and never mentioning the convent. Each of us carried the weight of what we had left behind, but we also carried the fragile hope of freedom. Martha, now Aunt Millie, often reminded us that survival meant discipline, just as life in the convent had required discipline, but now it was for a different purpose. Joy, now Rose, tried to bring light into our days, teaching children nearby to read, while Eleanor, now Catherine, spent hours studying, determined to build knowledge that could help us adapt. Sarah, now Emily, remained quiet, still haunted by the past, but slowly she began to smile again. I, as Linda, tried to blend into the role of a teacher, even though my heart still carried the scars of what we had endured. The world believed we had vanished, and in a way, we had. We were no longer the women we once were, but shadows living in secrecy. Each day was a test of endurance, and each night was a reminder of the storm that had carried us away. Though the inn gave us shelter, the years ahead would demand silence, sacrifice, and strength as we built lives that were never truly ours while hiding from the past that refused to let go. The years that followed at the inn were marked by silence and constant caution. We lived as shadows, blending into the community with our new names, never revealing who we truly were. Each day was a test of discipline, and each night carried the fear that someone might discover our past. We worked quietly, helping with chores, teaching children, and assisting Sam with the inn, but always careful not to draw attention. Our story of being cousins who had lost everything in a flood became second nature, repeated whenever questions arose. Yet beneath the surface, the weight of secrecy pressed heavily on us. Sarah, now Emily, struggled the most, often retreating into herself, but slowly she began to heal, finding comfort in small tasks and the support of her sisters. Martha, now Aunt Millie, became our anchor, reminding us that survival required strength and patience. Eleanor, now Catherine, studied constantly, determined to prepare us for whatever challenges lay ahead. Joy, now Rose, tried to bring light into our days, though her laughter was quieter than before. As for me, living as Linda, I carried the burden of leadership, knowing that one wrong step could expose us all. We avoided churches, avoided priests, and avoided any place where questions might be asked. The world believed we had vanished, and in truth, we had. We were no longer the women we once were, but fugitives living in secrecy. Time passed, seasons changed, and our lives became a rhythm of caution and quiet endurance. Yet even as we built new routines, the memory of that stormy night and the shadows of Father Michael never left us. Though we had escaped the convent walls, the past was never truly gone, and the burden of living in hiding would shape the rest of our lives in ways we could not yet imagine. Part 8. The years at the inn slowly turned into decades, and our lives became a long exile lived in silence. We learned to move carefully, never drawing attention, never speaking of the convent, and never revealing the truth of who we were. Each of us carried the weight of secrecy differently. Martha, as Aunt Millie, grew older and weaker, but she remained our anchor, reminding us that survival was itself a form of faith. Eleanor, as Catherine, continued to study and read, always searching for meaning in the life we had built. Joy, as Rose, found small joys in teaching children, though her spirit was quieter than before. Sarah, as Emily, carried scars that never fully healed, but she began to find strength in the simple routines of daily life. As for me, living as Linda, I bore the burden of memory, knowing that the truth of our escape was locked inside me. The world believed we had vanished, and in a way we had. We were no longer the women who had once prayed together in stone halls, but fugitives who had built new names and new stories. The stormy night of September 1979 remained etched in my soul, a reminder of the moment when we chose freedom over captivity. We lived in constant fear of discovery, yet we also lived with gratitude for the chance to breathe without the shadow of Father Michael. Time passed and the world changed around us, but we remained hidden, carrying a secret that could shatter faith if ever revealed. Even after decades of silence, the truth could not remain buried forever, and the moment would come when I would finally break the shadows and reveal what really happened on that stormy night. Decades passed, and our hidden lives became a routine of silence and caution. We blended into communities, always careful to remain unnoticed, always carrying the burden of our secret. Martha, as Aunt Millie, grew frail with age, but her wisdom guided us until her final days, reminding us that survival itself was a form of faith. Eleanor, as Catherine, continued to study and write, keeping records that helped us stay consistent in our false identities. Joy, as Rose, found purpose in teaching children, though her laughter never returned to its former brightness. Sarah, as Emily, carried scars that time could not erase, but she learned to live quietly, finding strength in small acts of kindness. As for me, living as Linda, I bore the responsibility of memory, knowing that one day the truth would have to be spoken. The world believed we had vanished, and, in many ways, we had. We were no longer the women who once prayed together in stone halls, but fugitives who had built new names and new lives. Yet the past never truly disappeared. The stormy night of September 1979 remained etched in my soul, and the shadow of Father Michael lingered in every thought. We lived in silence for 28 years, carrying a truth that could shatter faith if ever revealed. And now, at 70 years old, I know that silence can no longer protect us. The time has come to speak, to reveal what happened, and to let the world see the truth that was buried for so long. The final part of this story will uncover the full truth of our disappearance, the price we paid for freedom, and the reason I can no longer remain silent after all these years. After 28 years of silence, I can no longer remain hidden. The world believed 5 young women vanished on a stormy night in September 1979, but the truth is that we escaped a nightmare disguised as faith. We climbed the convent walls not to abandon God, but to protect ourselves from a man who used his position to harm and silence us. We lived in secrecy, carrying false names, building lives that were never truly ours, and bearing the heavy burden of a truth too dangerous to speak. Martha, Eleanor, Joy, Sarah, and I paid the price of freedom with decades of exile, but survival was our only choice. Now, at 70 years old, I understand that silence protects no one. The truth must be spoken, not for revenge, but so that others may see the dangers hidden behind sacred walls and understand that faith should never be used as a weapon. We were not rebels, nor traitors, nor lost souls. We were women who chose life over captivity, dignity over silence, and truth over fear. This story is not only ours, but a reminder that evil can hide behind holy cloth, and that courage sometimes means leaving everything behind. The storm of that September night carried us into shadows, but today, by telling this story, I step back into the light. The secret of our disappearance is no longer buried. The truth is now revealed, and it will forever change the way faith, power, and silence are understood.